Good afternoon, Yapsiane. This is the state of the Velociraptor. And so, I mean, one of the interesting things that I've been sort of wondering about this year is, State of the Velociraptor is traditionally talking about, State of Perl 5, and the Perl 5 community and that side of our wonderful, insane family. But that leaves me with a kind of a question this year. Which Perl 5? Don't get ahead of me. I mean, you can ask, does Mo count? I mean, it's very significantly a sort of a Perl 5-like thing, except for the fact that they've replaced the arrow with a dot, which keeps confusing me. I think possibly I've been writing too much Perl and C. Never mind. Does P2 count? Especially in that that's a lot closer syntactically, but is still going to have some semantic differences, and I think Rainy is running screaming from a lot of the XS API. And to be entirely honest, I can't say I blame him. I think the answer to this is it's the family thing, in the same sense as Perl 5 and Perl 6 are both Perls and part of the Perl family. Mo and P2 are aiming to also be languages within the Perl family, sharing the same family values of whip-aptitude, of manipulexity, and of scaring the living crap out of people with syntax. And it strikes me, other than the syntax part, we're kind of getting more like Lisp every year, especially in the sense of people keep trying to write us off, and we keep going, yeah, whatever, and doing cool, insane things. That was a common joke. Oh! You've thrown me for a loops now. And anyway, we're not that much like Lisp yet, because at least over in Perl 5 land. Damn it, where are my macros? Anyway. I have no better answer, sorry. But we've always had a tradition of trying to prototype things on CPAN in such a way that they can later go into the language. But that limits things we can't do on CPAN. It also has certain other limiting factors, like, say, anybody who's ever looked at the internals of Devil Declare can quite happily say that, yes, I did do that on CPAN, but possibly I shouldn't. However, it did serve its main purpose, which was to embarrass Perl 5 porters into building something competently written to obsolete it. Suits me fine. My normal experience with C code is that after sort of 5 years of trying, I can now get to the stage where it compiles and segfaults on me much quicker. So I think this is a great idea, and I think maybe, seeing forks of 5-core as well would be cool, but let's try some crazy things. Let's take this whole idea of sort of expanding, experimenting, letting standardization come by consensus, and then folding it all back in. That seems to have worked pretty well for us over the years. It has this great ability to let ideas live or fail, to be able to do several revisions of it and not end up with the backwards compatibility problem. So I think this is great. And anyway, if P2 or Mo come up with any really cool ideas, we will, as is traditional, thieve them. We've been doing it to Perl 6 for years. That is effectively how we got Moose, right? I mean, okay, Stephen kind of more took it with him as he left and sneaked out the back door with it, but it's still the same sort of principle. Also, Stephen scares me now. With his new haircut, he looks like the guy out of Falling Down. See, that's what you get for doing an impression of me on stage, you bastard. I sadly can't do nearly as good an impression of Stephen. I still have too much of my hair. The other thing that may or may not happen, I think at least one of the blockers is me getting off my lazy ass and actually doing the necessary pod changes. But, you know, RJBS sounds relatively upbeat about something in the area of the pumpkin pearl idea. So, assuming it happens, I'm hoping that we'll also see people trying things by forking Perl 5 and messing around and seeing what happens. Because, I mean, that would be really cool. Not only would it be a great way to experiment, but it means we don't even have to go through the whole process of sneaking in through the back door to steal things. We can just steal it by a git pull. Laziness and impatience all in one go, you know. But I want to kind of talk about backwards compatibility a bit, because every sort of time people talk about Perl 5 core moving forwards, people start going, oh, but backwards compatibility is holding it back. Backwards compatibility is the bogeyman under the bed. No, it isn't. For one, as RJBS pointed out in his talk, there's very few things, at least, that make it as far as being discussed on Perl 5 porters, where backwards compatibility is the reason for them not happening. But for a second thing, backwards compatibility is a really, really, really hugely valuable thing to us for a very important reason that people aren't paying attention to, which is that you underestimate the risks of not doing it. TCL. TCL, I actually find a fascinating and entertaining language to work in. This may say more about me than it does about the quality of TCL as a language, but I find it kind of entertaining. And TCL 8.6 came out, I think early this year, or no, late last year. I'm sorry, I turned 30 this year. Apparently I'm going senile already. But TCL 8.6, they actually shipped a mopping core with 8.6. It's kind of like, heck, the language where everything is a string, including the arrays, shipped a mop before us. And you know what? User bin TCL on every operating system that I regularly use is still 8.4. Guess why? There's only minor compat changes. They're less ambitious about deprecating things and adding new features to core automatically than most of the proposals that we see. But it's quite enough to make Debian stick at 8.4 because they don't want to break people depending on user bin TCL. On the other hand, Debian are actually upgrading their Perl to reasonable versions. I mean, Debian stable actually has something from this century now. It's awesome. And lots of distros are shipping relatively modern Perls. Okay, it's 5.12s and 5.14s in most places. I believe that Omnios, which is a Solaris derivative, actually tracks it properly and keeps fully up to date. Yeah, which this is a scary thing. Want the most modern environment possible? Use Solaris. Well, cool, more power to them. But the point is, the reason that they're able to repeatedly do that is that they can rely on backwards compatibility. If we broke compatibility in some annoying way, user bin Perl would not be upgradable on Debian because the Debian toolchain relies on Perl. They're actually significantly taking advantage of the newer Perl to modernize it, but they're in a situation to do that gradually on their own basis. I hang out in the Debian Perl IRC channel and basically act as an upstream of last resort for CPAN in general, because there's at least a reasonable chance I can track down the author and poke them until they do what I need. But I'm watching them do that, and the reason they're able to do that is because of the level of backwards compatibility we maintain. That's what means that they're comfortable having it as a core part of the system, core part of the operating system. And, okay, Perl Brew is awesome, but if somebody is coming new to Perl, they're not going to want to do a full compile cycle before they even start playing with anything. So user bin Perl being recent might not matter that much to most of the people in this room, but in terms of the people who's just getting started, think of your past selves. Your past selves started off on whatever version was in user bin Perl. And so maintaining the backwards compatibility means that people who are taking their first baby steps with Perl have a much better chance of having a decent Perl to do it with. And I think, you know, Perl has always had this commitment to you being allowed to write baby Perl as well as adult Perl. The point is, we want to maintain a commitment to write modern baby Perl as well as modern adult Perl, not baby Perl 5.8 forevermore. And Perl 5 Porters is gradually changing. Yes, it's a slow process, but you know we have to maintain backwards compatibility with Perl 5 Porters' personalities, and that's fair enough. These guys have done so much important work and have such a deep understanding of things that accepting that culture is going to take a while to change is just one of those things. And as RJBS was saying, the more new people we attract, the more new blood we get in, the more the culture shifts, simply by the fact that the profile of the committers is shifting. So, you know, jumping on, what? Oh, right, okay, somebody was muttering, not talking to me. Fair enough. And signatures is going to land. I keep hearing this rubbish about Perl 5 Porters drove off the signatures patch. No, the guy who was working on the signatures patch has this thing called a life and a family, and he got busy. He's allowed to do that. If you don't like it, you can have every penny you paid him back. But he is working on it, and so far as I'm aware, it's hopefully going to land reasonably early on in the next development cycle. So, you know, we can finally stand up and say, if you're scared of @_, it's okay, have a hug. Seriously, signatures would be cool, and while @_ doesn't bother me, it would be really nice to not have to deal with it on the situations where I don't need to, but seriously, the OO intro is sane now. I mean, we're actually starting to modernize chunks of the Perl doc. Dave Rolski wrote a document that actually talks about Perl OO as we might do it now, rather than every time we get a newbie turning up, having learned Perl from the Perl docs, we have to go, yeah, now forget everything you learned about OO, because here's Moose. You are going to hate us for about 2 months, and then you're going to hate the person who didn't update the documentation for the rest of your life. Finally, this problem is solved. And this sort of progress is important. Yes, okay, it's baby steps, but it's steps forwards. And the point here is, we got annual releases, what, 4 years ago? This is now the 4th in a row. And then at this point, people are starting to genuinely believe that we're going to keep getting annual releases, which means, you know, the time between producing a feature for 5-core and it actually being installable in a stable version of Perl is no longer measured in archaeological time. And seriously, that's what causes it to happen. I mean, I dropped a very, very minor patch into either 5.12 or 5.14. I don't remember which one. It was about a 2-line warnings category change. entirely in order to support the crack-fueled crazy that I do in WebSimple. And indeed, signatures may completely break that, and if it does, that's my problem. I am not letting my crack-fueled crazy stand in the way of signatures. That would be wrong. But the point is, I wouldn't even have thought to bother if we hadn't had that annual release cycle, because the time to actually benefit from that patch would just have been too long for it to seem of value with me. So the fact that we've now got the established annual releases to the point where the outside world can see that that's going on, rather than the fact that I knew it was going to happen because I was bugging Jesse Vincent about my patch, momentum is going to start to build. You know, these things take time. We've been at this, 25 years now, right? And okay, Perl 5 core is kind of crazy, but it works. It does work. And people first exposed to it go kind of, oh my God, macros. Perl 5 isn't written in C. It's written in a dialect of C preprocessor that sort of looks like C. Well, you know the funny thing, after a couple of years of reading the Perl 5 source regularly, not for the purposes of actually doing anything to it, but for the purposes of understanding what I was doing to the guts of Perl, I've found reading through the TCL, Python and Ruby interpreters to be really easy, because hey, they look exactly the same. Seriously. Because if you're going to have portable, sensibly optimized C code, you have to end up doing that. I mean, one of the funniest things was when FreeBSD added separate network stacks for jails. The way they compile the kernel differently so that you only take the performance hit for that if you're using it, uses the exact same macro trick that Perl does in order to handle multiplicity and threading. It was great. It was about the only bit of the guy's presentation I actually understood. So, okay, possibly Perl has taught me how to write C preprocessor, but not C. But it's the nature of the beast. This is how you end. This is how this sort of project ends up. And the fact that pretty much every other comparable language is in much the same sort of situation says this. If everybody has ended up going in this direction, it may actually have been the least worst solution after all. So, I mean, as far as I see it, in terms of the sort of future of Perl 5 core and the progress of Perl 5 core, the only thing to fear, well, is a zombie apocalypse. Obviously, come on. You don't fear fear itself. That's a complete flipping tautology. It makes no sense at all. And, Perl Brew now loves local lib, so it's very comfortable to have your own whatever version of Perl you want and multiple packages of libraries so that you can switch between them for deployment. Stability of those local lib dependencies. Loves Miyagawa's Carton. Okay, some of the internals of Carton are a big bag of crazy, but it's toolchain code. Toolchain code is by definition a big bag of crazy. And to be entirely honest, I suspect if I'd written it, it would have been an even bigger bag of crazy and more importantly, had a much uglier user interface because Miyagawa is so much better at that than I am. But anyway, we have the technology and, Moose is kind of a standard in a lot of cases. And I think we finally hit the point where I can say that Moo is an effective bridge for the gap when you're in a situation where, for whatever reason, you can't use Moose. Porting Moose stuff to Moo in such a way that its Moose consumers never notice it's switched. Bear in mind that Moo does its very best to pretend to be Moose under that circumstance. It works. We've done it with a few projects now. So, people with constrained environments can now get access to Throwable, get access to Email Sender. I think Devil REPL got ported across as well. And it's not going to be a hard thing to do anymore. And people with unconstrained environments can still have all of moose and never notice the difference. Which is basically the purpose of moo has been achieved, which is the M-star apocalypse is here and you now have no excuse for not using it. So I reckon, you know, even sort of Perl 5 straight up itself, the future's bright. The future's kind of unknowable given all of the crazy ideas that people are throwing around at the moment. You know what? I really like that. This is the first time I'm standing up here saying, I don't know what's going to happen in the next year because people are trying all sorts of cool, crazy things that may or may not work. We're actually starting to experiment. We've worked out as a community that Perl 6 doesn't have the monopoly on trying to make actual forward progress. And this is really nice. This is good, you know. Bright future for Perl 5, bright future for Perl 6 strikes me as a wonderful situation. You know, I'd much rather be competing with another Perl language than with, say, Python. And, okay, so, slight segue. I broke my hip last year. They kind of put a giant bolt in it to let the bone heal back around it, and I spent quite a while going around on crutches rather than just being crotchety. The one disadvantage of this within the next 5 years or so, I'm going to be on first name terms with every single TSA agent.
We're sorry our government is so
paranoid. Seriously, it's reached the point now where I'm so used to the enhanced pat down and bag search process that I can pretty much give them their entire spiel word for word as they're giving it. And the last two times, after the whole thing's done, the TSA agents have thanked me for being so cooperative and helpful with the process. It's like, yes, I'm kind of used to it now. I've had practice. Austin has been really kind of cool. Apart from the fact that it's actually hotter than Singapore was last time I was there. When they told me Texas was famous for barbecue, I didn't realize they meant it was going to be me. Oh, and I will note that in my last talk, I got a complaint from somebody local. Apparently, I didn't capitalize Texas. Now, first, I thought this was the capital. But second, since you asked so nicely, okay, there, I've capitalized it and made it more elite. I hope you're happy now. Anyway, so I should actually talk about the Perl community as well. Or perhaps I should say Perl communities at this point, because we're effectively a bunch of interlocking groups of weird, crazy people who come together around, whip-aptitude, manipulexity, and scaring people with syntax. Which it's a wonderful thing. I mean, we all share CPAN, although generally we share a different subset of CPAN. And that's another reason for my loving backwards compatibility. Even people inside finance houses where they cannot for the life of them get approval to upgrade anything can still share CPAN because it's not that hard to support everything from 5.8.1 upwards if you're writing pure Perl. I totally understand the people doing intelligent things with XS would much rather have a higher dependency version. Well, actually, by totally understand, I mean lots of people who actually can write C that works tell me that that's what I should understand. But still, we all share at least a reasonable subset of CPAN. That's important because it means we can all bring something different to the table, but still have that interlock of using the community as a force multiplier. That's such an important thing to the culture. Something that's fascinated me is that there are a bunch of people now who, for one reason or another, are using other things at work, but are still here. Because while they might not still be using Perl, they come to Yapsy for the Perl community and to tell us which things to steal from other languages. It's a distributed network of spies. It's fantastic. And you know, in return, they get 3 days of being hung over and shouted at by insane Englishmen. The other thing is, companies are substantially noticing the community. I'm seeing more and more that companies are actually engaging with the community. The number of people being able to do CPAN stuff on work time with their manager's permission is going up nicely. And we're also seeing more and more big chunks of sponsorship from corporates who get that part of the force multiplier effect is the community. And that if they're nice to us, we're going to do our best to help them out back. Because, you know, you buy a Perl hack a beer and he loves you forever, right? So, okay, we get to the usual thing of, okay, maybe overall Perl use, maybe it's falling, maybe some of the dark pan stuff out on the edges is falling off. So far as I see, the key end result of that is that Perl usage is falling. And I'm totally in favour of that. CGI must die, etc., etc. But the community is still growing. Maybe not as fast as we would like, maybe not as fast as other people, but you know, we're not measuring ourselves against other people. You know, if we wanted to measure ourselves against other people, well, you know, we could try and beat the Rails fanboys at being obnoxious and having Twitter drama. We could try and you know, beat the JavaScript people at being super fast right up until somebody fails to understand async and ends up with callback spaghetti. I don't see that it matters. What we should say is, if other communities are growing as well, more power to them, and let's just make sure that ours is too. So long as we're winning, so long as other people are winning, you don't have to have a loser. It's not a zero-sum game. The whole point of open source is it's a positive-sum game. Hallway++. Hallway++ has been all sorts of fun. Again. I really, when I first came up with the idea, I didn't realize what a monster I was creating. Not that I wouldn't have done it anyway if I had known, but one thing that fascinates me is, okay, I came up with the idea as an extrovert who wanted to talk to lots of people, to try and encourage people to come up to me and talk. But it turns out it's been deeply loved by introverts, not because it makes it any easier for them to start a conversation, but because having the Hallway++ sticker on their badge gets extroverts to come and start conversations with them. This had not occurred to me. This is because I'm an extrovert and dumb. But that's awesome. Equally, I'm not sure the introverts entirely understand the extroverts, because somebody on Yapsy made a point of saying to me, "Thank you for trying to talk to everybody wearing a Hallway++ sticker last year." Well, huh? I don't remember doing that. What actually happened was I just tried to talk to everybody like I do every year. They were just less surprised because they thought it was the sticker. Well, cool. Lots of interesting conversations, no matter how they come about, is an awesome thing, right? That's more fun for me than the talks. But it fascinates me that I didn't understand why the introverts loved it so much. And the introverts kind of didn't seem to understand why the extroverts loved it so much. And I think that's a very Perl community thing, in that we're kind of weird and kind of diverse and kind of all over the map, with all of us with our own personal crazy. And that's a lot of the fun. I mean, that's kind of the point. So, yeah, 25 years, I should probably try and say something on topic, right? So, Perl Zero apparently was released to Larry's office mates, but none of them will admit to it, and several of them have had therapy to block the memories out. The release date as such is classified as a potential weapon. Perl 1, though, was released on an unsuspecting world in 1987. I would have been 4 years old at that point. Perl 2 added regular expressions, because Perl 1 worked really nicely, but Larry got upset because the syntax wasn't scaring people enough. And that was in 1988. At which point I just about got as far as being sat on my father's lap while he wrote BBC Basic Code and going, "Daddy, that looks interesting. What are you doing?" Perl 3 added support for binary data, and that was in 1989. 4 added support for, well, we needed a version number for the Camel book to be released against, so they just called what they had at the time Perl 4 because it made it less confusing. Such cavalier use of major version numbers. Yet these days they seem to be kind of rationed. And that was 1991, and then Perl 5 added, well, kind of everything else, right? And that was released in 1994. By that point, I was 11 years old, and I think had stopped programming for a hobby because I just met Windows. Completely lost interest in programming and didn't get addicted again until I discovered Unix and Perl some years later. So, yes, indirectly, it's Larry's fault that I'm a programmer at all. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to blame you for it. But December 2000 was when I first started working at an ISP doing Perl code. I got given a crash course in C Shell and Pico on a BSDI box. Handed copies of what we used to refer to as the Perl Bible in 3 parts. And I had a shiny, relatively new Perl 560 to play with. And we used, we'd got this thing that CPAN existed. We got that CPAN existed. We definitely knew it was there. I know this because somebody had installed DBI. That was the only module we used. We didn't even use CGI.pm. We had a copy and paste query param snippet, and then print statements for outputting the HTML. Unfortunately, the person who defined the Perl programming standard there hadn't discovered you could do multi-line print statements. I shouted at him at some length when I discovered that feature. But these days, we're on Perl 5.18.0 and we use all sorts of stuff. Use all the modules. Way more fun. So I just want to take a moment to point out that, the pumpkin hat has been passed on many occasions. Here is a probably mostly complete list, unless I've screwed it up, of the various people. And I kind of like to take a moment to say at this point, thanks to all of these guys for 25 years of awesome. And now, we've hit 4 annual releases in a row. If we keep this up for another 25 years, we'll be at 558. Unless the zombies get us first, obviously. So, yeah, the future's looking kind of awesome from where I'm standing. The Perl community is awesome. The development processes, the possibilities are awesome. So for those of you for whom this is your first YAPC, welcome to the human family around the Perl language family. It's good to meet you all. And you know, the future of Perl is you. Thank you very much. And I can applaud you back at this point. Yeah, Larry's aim's better than yours. Thank you very much, and I shall now exit stage left so that you can have some lightning talks.